Hey guys, here we are, Alec, Peirce, Scuba Tech Tips. We're back again for another series. Kevin tells me this is the beginning of a new series. How many videos do we have now?
250 plus.
250 videos we put out in the last, whatever it is, 6, 12, 1400 years. If you're traveling out this way, heading up to the Muskokas or where the Kawarth is, or Lake Simcoe for scuba diving or whatever you're doing, Simcoe diving, right on the 400 at Barrie. You can't miss it. Great, great dive store. And by the way, I should mention, for any of you interested in getting into the diving industry, and we can chat about that sometime if it's a good idea or a bad idea with the economy the way it is. It's a good idea, I think. Chris and Lorraine here at Simcoe Diving have informed me that their plans for the future have changed. It's actually going to involve a change in their location. They're moving, so this dive store, this great little dive store that's been here for I don't know how long, but a great reputation, is actually available for someone who's interested in getting into the scuba industry. So if you have a little cash laying around and you want to get into the diving, and you always want to run a dive store, go on free trips and all that, these are a bit of jokes in here, then this just might be an opportunity. Keep it in mind. Anyway, let me know if you are interested. We can get you in touch or do it yourself. Get a hold of Simcoe Diving in Barrie. So here we go. This is a BC. Now I know if you were trained any time in the 21st century, meaning the 2000s, you look at it, well, that's not a BC. Yes, it is. This is actually a BC. Now, this is from the 70s, I'm guessing, at least the 70s, maybe the 70s, early 80s, and so that's a different style. This was called the horse collar, and I think you can see quickly why it's called the horse collar, and that's academic. These were great BCs. This is what we had for 20 or 30 years, starting way back in the 50s. This is what we had. It's only recently, not recently, the last 20 years or so, the BCs have now become integrated into the tank regulator system to become a scuba system. Tank, buoyancy compensator device, BCD. But this is a BC. Now, the reason I'm showing you this old piece of equipment is very simple. I get a lot of comments, a lot of people who contact me. Some just send me emails and say, hey, Alec, guess what? I just got a great deal on a bunch of old scuba gear. And then they proceed to tell me what they got and how little they paid for it. And the inevitable question, how do I get this service? Can I dive with it? And what's it worth? And all those questions that they should have asked before they paid for it, right? And anyway, the point is that the topic is buying used gear. Is it good? Is it smart? Is it economically a smart thing to do? And so on. So let me take just 2 minutes and tell you. Generally, no. Generally, it's not a smart thing to do. Usually. And the reason I say that is, and it applies to a lot of things, not just scuba equipment, is that generally the person who is selling the equipment is selling it for a reason. And that person may not tell you the reason. He may not lie to you, but he may not tell the real reason. I think it's important when you're buying something, and I do it all the time, when you're buying something, that you find out why the person is selling it. Because the reason they're selling it may be the same reason that you're going to have to sell it too. It isn't worth anything. It doesn't work, doesn't do the job, can't get parts or service. You see, there's usually reasons for it. Let me show you a couple of pieces of scuba gear that you should avoid. Now, before we do that, let me list a few things. Used wetsuits. Should you buy a used wetsuit? If it's a fairly good wetsuit, relatively new, and for a wetsuit that means less than 10 years old. You can't buy a 30-year-old wetsuit, but less than 10 years old, and if it fits, does a good job, fits you, and if it's cheap, and it could be a good buy, okay? Mast fins and snorkels. Again, if they're clean, relatively modern, and they fit, and they're cheap, could be a good buy. Sure, why not? So let's get down to the heart of the matter. Let's get down to the heart or the lung? I guess the lung of the matter. The scuba system. Should you buy a scuba system? And there are 3 parts to a scuba system: buoyancy compensator, tank, and regulator. Let's deal with them in a different order. I got a BC in my hands, so let's look at it. Should you buy used BC? If the BC that you are looking at is less than 5 years old, now it's worth considering. Next, you need to go online or call a dive store that services that equipment. Give him the exact model, make and model of the BC you're considering, and ask him, is this a good BC? Is it serviceable? Can you get parts for it? And what's it worth? Any decent dive store owner would give you an idea. Now, I realize, and you realize, that dive store owners, by their very nature, would prefer you to buy new equipment from them. But at the same time, the fact remains that people do buy used equipment, and a good dive store owner will do his best to be your friend, an advisor, he is an expert, and give you good, solid, truthful advice on the BCDs. That's the first thing you do. Secondly, bottom line, BCDs, no, don't buy BCDs. BCD is like clothing. It's clothing. This is nylon or denim. It's like a pair of jeans. Did you buy used jeans? Well, maybe if they were jeans that were worn by Elvis Presley, maybe. But off the street, just a guy's got a pair of jeans and he's worn them out and wants to get rid of them. He's asking $10 for them. Yeah, well, you can buy brand new stretchy denim jeans at Costco for $10. What the heck? So generally speaking, no, it's cloth. It wears out. Now there are two types of BCs in terms of construction. The new BCs are a very, very tough nylon outer shell, and it is coated on the inside with a PVC coating, bonded right onto that outer shell. So the outside is like this. You can hear that. The inside is smooth PVC. That makes it airtight and waterproof. Okay, so it's a one-piece shell. That's what it's called. And that's all new BCDs. And I mean new since 2000. Older BCDs like this one looks good, eh? Looks like new. It might even blow up. Might even hold air for a little while. But these old BCDs are different. Can you zoom in here a little bit, Kevin? I'm going to try to open this up. You can tell this type of BCD because it'll have a zipper around the neck. Can you get in there? And now you can see that there is this outer shell, a zipper, and then inside there's another bladder. It's called a bladder. This bladder was made of a variety of materials, largely plastic, PVC. And these bladders, this is what wears out. This old nylon outer shell doesn't wear out. The zippers, if they're kept clean and lubricated, they don't wear out. But these do wear out. And if they're not very carefully cleaned and rinsed to get the salt and the dirt out of them in a very short period of time, a couple of years, they can actually wear out. 10 years, definitely. 15 years, they actually dried out and don't work anymore. You can't get them anymore. So even if you pay $25 for this BCD, unless you're going to make it a wall hanger, hang it up on the wall and tell people it was your grandfather's, no, don't waste a penny on it. Doesn't matter anything about all the other bits and pieces of attachments. If you're going to use this, if you're planning on using this for your daily diving activities, no. BCDs are one piece of equipment that you should definitely not consider. Now let's deal quickly with tanks. We have several tanks here around the shop. And tanks is another very, very simple matter. Generally speaking, used tanks are okay. Again, there are some provisions, okay? And again, you should count on your local dive store owner. If you can, give a guy who's selling it a small deposit and say, I just want to have it checked out, be sure it's okay. And then give him a small deposit. Take it to the dive store or go with him to the dive store if there's one close by and ask the dive, is this a usable tank? Can I get this tested, cleaned and tested and stamped so I can use it? And the guy said, no, you can't. Or he'll say, yeah, that's a good looking tank. He'll check the date and the information on it. He'll check his books because all this information is recorded, it's government controlled. And he'll say, yeah, that's a good tank. No problem with that. I can clean that and fill that and you got a really good tank. Tanks sell for $200 roughly. So if you can get a good used tank for $75, you could, because you're going to pay $50, $60, $70 to get it tested, and if the valve is good, maybe get the valve service for $20, so you got a total investment of maybe $150. That's a good deal. You saved $50, $60 plus taxes. So that's a good deal. So that's the story on tanks. To emphasize the importance of doing that, Luxfer, L-U-X-F-E-R, one of the largest manufacturers of scuba tanks in the world. They produced all the scuba tanks for a number of years, and all the scuba tanks for U.S. divers, a very big company. They had a problem a number of years ago. In fact, specifically from 1972 to 1992, 20 years. They produced tanks using a very specific aluminum alloy, and it was discovered not until the 80s or 90s that those particular tanks made with that particular aluminum alloy were not safe. They developed cracks, and more than a few of them actually exploded. Not nice. So again, this is where your local dive store is very important. Get in there and see your local dive store owner. He'll be happy to help you because he services tanks and he fills tanks. That's what he does for a living. And that brings us to the last item, regulators. Well, now, the regulator is the actual thing that gives you air in your mouth and allows you to breathe safely. And you have to have it serviced every year, maybe every 2 years. So should I buy a good used regulator? Well, the important word is good. Again, I'm going to say, just generally speaking, that any regulator made in 2000, 1999 or later should be okay. You'll be able to get parts and service. Now, I'm going to say that it ought to be a brand name. So, Joe Diver is not a brand name, you know. Easy Breathe, E-Z-Breathe is not a brand name. So stick with the big brand names. U.S. Divers, Mares, Oceanic, Sherwood, any of those big, there's about 5 or 6 big brand names. If you stick with the big brand names, you know you're getting quality, plus you'll always, for as long as you're going to be diving anyway, be able to get parts and service for it, okay? There are a few specific regulators that were very, very popular at one time. I've got one in my hands right here. This is a good old U.S. Divers Con Shelf. I don't know how many millions of these regulators were sold, but they were fantastic regulators. This was called the Bullet. I guess it looks a little bit like a bullet, you see. And the second stage was extremely well made too. Millions of these were sold. They were used by the military, by divers worldwide. There's lots of these out there. And be very, very careful. Again, depend on your LDS, the expert at your local dive store. You should try to avoid U.S. Divers, pre-99, no Daycor. Don't touch Daycor at all. You cannot get parts or service or any Daycor. Big company. Sold millions of regulators. I loved them. Sold hundreds, thousands. I dove with them for years. Don't touch them. Any Mares regulators prior to 1999? The regulator has the word Voit on it, V-O-I-T. Don't touch it. You know, well, they've been gone since the 60s. But that's about it. So watch those specific brands. I guess the bottom line here, guys, is don't be afraid to go to your local dive store. Sometimes, I had a dive store for almost 50 years. Sometimes people will say, well, I don't want to go to the dive store owner because he thinks I'm being cheap. Yes. Or you think he wastes his money when he goes to buy a car? Do you think he doesn't shop around? You think he doesn't ask what's good and what's bad? Or he's buying a swimming pool or a chair or furniture? Of course he does. You're not being cheap. You're being smart. So don't be afraid to take equipment, used gear, into your local dive store and say, listen, I have a chance to buy this. I can buy the whole thing for $50. Is it worthwhile? Chances are he can look at it, and for $50, he'll probably say, gosh, yeah, that's good, that's good, that's good. You easily got it. Take it. Yeah, it's great. That's garbage, that's garbage. He'll tell you. But if you say, I can get this for $400, he'll look at it and say, gosh, you know, that's no good, and that's no good, and that can't be serviced. The rest, you know, kind of dodgy. You can probably buy that brand new from me. I'll give you a bit of a discount for $400, no more than that. He'll probably say, no, don't buy it. Point is, he knows his business, and if he's a good dive store owner, been in business for a while, and knows his business, is good to customers, he'll give you honest advice. That's the best thing to do. So there you go. Should I buy used diving gear? Oh, a lot of ifs in there. I hope this video has been of some help to you. And don't forget, we're here at Simcoe Diving. Simcoe Diving in Barrie. Keep that in mind as well, what I told you earlier. Kevin's going to have a couple of links in there for you, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Alec, Peirce, Scuba Tech Tips. Bye-bye.